Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome to No Woman Left Behind. I'm Rosie Zilinskas. Today we're going to be talking to Barbara Rozgonyi, who left corporate world years ago because she was having a hard time balancing being a mom with her corporate job. Barbara's going to talk to us about some of the characteristics that women in corporate need to have to advance in their careers, as well as core values. Barbara Rozgonyi leads CoryWest Media, a creative marketing communication consultancy that attracts attention, builds brands, and connects communities. Named after Barbara's mother and grandmother, CoryWest Media inspires innovation as it fuels growth. An advocate and mentor for women in business, Barbara's career path progressed from her start as a sales rep to a national sales manager to a corporate communications consultant to a digital marketing thought leader today. A lifelong Chicagoan at heart, now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, right between the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Atlantic Ocean. Barbara is going to talk to us about shameless self-promotion, and also she's going to give us some fantastic career tips for continuing to advance in your career. Stay tuned. Barbara, thank you so much for being on the No Woman Left Behind podcast. I appreciate you being here. Barbara, I'm going to start right off the bat and ask you, you left corporate when your kids were young. Mm-hmm. What I want to know is what made you leave corporate at that time?
Well, it was probably one of the biggest decisions I've ever made in my life, honestly. What happened, just to rewind just a little bit, is I had our first child, my daughter, Phoebe, and I negotiated a 10-week maternity leave, which was unheard of. I went back to work. The day I went back, my husband moved to New York. So I didn't have any family, and I had to find a babysitter, and I had to go downtown. They said only 4 days a week. Great. So fast forward a few months, it got to be pretty rocky, and my husband did come back home, but it was just hard. So I went through career counseling, and they said I should be a florist or a writer, which was not a national sales trainer, the job I had at the time. But I decided, you know what, I will look into being a writer. So I went to the Independent Writers of Chicago, and I met some women who are moms who had quit their jobs and they had successful businesses. So I thought maybe I could do this. And really the defining moment was when I woke up in a hotel in St. Louis on Mother's Day, my very first Mother's Day, all by myself. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm a mom. I should be with my family, not in some hotel 5 hours away. So I went back and I told my company I was quitting. And it was hard because I made a lot of money. In fact, my husband and I talked about it, and I said, we are going to cut our income by 1/2. And he said, if you want to stay home with the kids, you can do it. What's your plan though? I said, I'm going to start a business. And so I decided I would do that. And that's how I decided to start my company.
Got it. Okay. And so what was your process? So obviously we have the Great Resignation right now. Right. And with the Great Resignation, I know some women are struggling with that same type of thought process as far as like, what do I do? Do I quit? Do I, stay home with my kids? Do you happen to remember what were some of the struggles in you actually making that decision?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are so many. First of all, what do you do with the kids? Right. I mean, let's be honest, it's like, I know with COVID, the kids were around all the time, but I had to find daycare, and it couldn't be the one where my daughter went before. And then the one turned into 3, so you have to figure out what to do with the kids. And you know what? Being a business owner is not for everyone. It takes a lot of skills. You have to be an accountant. You have to be a marketing rep. You have to be a salesperson. And if you're a writer, you have to be creative. So there was a lot going on. And honestly, I had no writing portfolio. So I decided I would be the healthcare communications expert for Chicago. Can you believe that? I look back and I'm like, what? So I just called every healthcare organization, just shaking as I made the phone calls. And I said, hi, would you be interested in the latest things that are happening with healthcare communications? Everyone said yes. I added them to my newsletter and boom, I had a business.
Interesting. Okay. And so part of the decision obviously was because you had young children. And
Right.
Again, women are leaving and have been leaving in droves since COVID started because of the same situation where people didn't know what to do with their kids. They had to physically be at work. A lot of us were fortunate enough to be able to just, transition remotely. And as a matter of fact, I have had friends where there's two parents and there was a baby and they were like taking turns taking care of the baby because again, all the daycares were closed and whatnot. And they're juggling, taking business meetings and whatnot. And I'm like, how in the world did you manage that? Thank goodness my kids are 21 and 24, so I didn't have to deal with that. But that is an incredible amount of stress on parents, specifically women. I understand that women were picking up an average 20 to 30 hours more of housework, with the pandemic. So it is a lot. So when you were able to finally transition out of corporate, did you miss being around people? So what is the other side of the coin?
Yeah, I did because, we didn't really have the internet then, we didn't really have cell phones. So it was pretty much just me. So what I did was I reached out to this group of women that I met when my daughter was 5 weeks old. And I'd only met with them for about 4 or 5 weeks. And I said, hey, can I come back to the play group? And they said, sure. And I said, what can I bring? They said grapes, but cut them in half. And I said, okay. So I did. And I showed up. And one of the women there was a graphic designer. So she and I actually formed an alliance and started referring projects to each other. And we grew our business together that way. But it was really hard. And I know I had to really hide the fact that I was working from home. That wasn't in vogue at the time. It was looked down upon. People wanted to know why you were doing that. There was also kind of a lot of thought about why would a mother want to work? But on the other hand, I was doing things like doing sales trainings for video productions for Park Davis, doing these really, really exciting projects that were part-time enough that I could fit them in around my children's schedule and my schedule, not wear me out and still bring in some really good income.
That's awesome.
It was, yeah.
So I know that you started a podcast about a year ago or so. And the reason why, tell me a little bit about the reason why you started the podcast.
Well, Rosie, I know a lot of people. And I think for anyone who's listening to this, just think about your network and take a few minutes. And before we got on the Zoom screen today, I started writing out a list of all the people that I'd known. And just coincidentally, there was someone I wanted to interview for my podcast. And I don't have their contact information, but I have their co-author's contact information. I never met this person, but I said, here's a post I wrote about them in 2008 in Chicago. I wrote a blog post and I sent that. And so, I thought about over time, my path has crossed a lot of other people's paths, as has yours, and you just have to really imagine that a lot of people and those people know a lot of people. So I looked at my network and I thought, who do I really miss that I haven't talked to in a long time? So I started writing a guest list of people I'd like to interview. And they're people that I've known from my earliest days in business to people I just met. We moved to Charlotte. There's a whole long list of people. And one of the cool things is you can feel this energy. Like you listen to the podcast with Larry Long Jr. and Larry and I met in June of, we met in person in June and about a year ago. And so we got to know each other, but you can see that there's a relationship that's there. So I would encourage you, if there's one tip you want to take away, think about who you'd really love to talk to and whether or not you have a podcast, call them up, send them an email, just say, thinking about you. If you have a picture that you took a while back, send that. But just reconnect with people because everyone wants to touch everyone else's hearts in a good way in the workplace, from a relationship basis. So how can you share some of the goodness that's in your heart today?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now, I understand that some of the people that you have interviewed in your podcast have become your friends, and they're in prominent positions. That's right. This podcast is mainly around women in corporate, moving up the ladder, and maybe they're not aware of holding themselves back. So what are some of the characteristics that you can think of with these women that are in prominent positions? I think it's important for us to identify some of the characteristics that these women have in common.
Oh, I so agree. And, that's a fantastic question to think about. What characteristics do you see? And, I think about the women that I've interviewed who are mentors to me, and they have been, and we've known each other. And, a couple of things I would say: enthusiasm. They're really enthusiastic, not just about their work, but about life. They're very positive. So when you see them, there's kind of like, there's going to be some sparkle or effervescence that's just like a natural spring that's bubbling up. So there's that. They're very confident, but they're not cocky. They know how to play the game, but they're not going to tell you how to run the show. So I love that about them. And they're big risk takers. They don't think twice. If someone says, "Would you like to try this?" they'll say, "I'll do it." And one of the places I met them was at Sears, when Sears Roebuck and Company was a huge, well-admired American institution. I landed at Sears as a consultant, thanks to my friend Sharon Phillips, who was a mentor, and we worked in the communications department. And there, I really got to see them in action, and I got to take projects that, no one wanted to work on the diversity project. And I said, "I will," so I got that from them. I saw that if I could take a leap and take a risk, who was I to do anything but to make a success out of it? And that's what I think you need to do, is just be confident, take that first step, because that's what it's about. It's just taking it step by step by step. It's not the end game, because it's going to change from whatever you could have imagined it to be to probably something even better than you could ever thought of.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I love the fact that you say that these women have a sparkle and they're risk takers, because obviously for someone that is trying to move up the ladder and advance in their careers, they have to have some kind of initiative. First of all, they need to know that they deserve the career of their dreams, right? That's one of the things that I'm constantly talking about. And as far as taking risks, applying for jobs, or even talking to people, I think I really like what you said about looking at your network and trying to figure out who you should reconnect. And this is a network not necessarily just within your corporation, but complete outside of your corporation, because the more people you talk to, the more ideas you can actually come up with to get to that next position. But I love the fact that that you said risk taking, because a lot of women aren't risk takers, and we want to stay in our comfort zone. And when you stay in your comfort zone, it's a way of holding yourself back. So I think that's great. Now, I know that you do sales. As far as women selling their value, selling their skills, talking to employers on opportunities, what are some things that you think women could do to advocate for themselves? And then we'll talk about a mentor after that.
Okay, great. Well, I think the first thing is to get your story straight, because I feel like, you look at resumes, you listen to interviews, and a lot of people sound like each other. They say what they think people want to hear, but what is it that really makes you different? What drives you? What's your passion? And why are you here? Why do you want this job? And there's some things you can do to really stand out. And knowing your values is an important one. And that's really going to connect you with opportunities that are great for you. If there are values that don't, like if you see a job and you think, "Oh, I should apply for this," but there's something in your intuition that says, "I don't think that's going to work," you definitely don't want to apply for it. And with sales, I think it's all about, it's always surprising to me that people want to do business with me, which is kind of funny, because I'm like, there are so many other people they could do business with. But what keeps coming back is, you're a nice person to do business with. Now, what does that mean? I don't really know, but I think it means that I'm empathetic, I care about them, and I'm a real person. And I'm not trying to say I'm really great. I'm just trying to say that I just like people, and I feel like if that comes across, that you want an authentic relationship, you are interested in that person, you have matching values, and really the key is you want to help them solve their problems and you want to listen, then you're going to advance.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that. Now, let's talk a little bit about, a little bit about values. When you say values, what kind of values are you referring to?
Well, when I do workshops, there is an exercise I use because I feel like you have to know what your own values are. And I've done this. I did this with my kids when they were little, and it was really cute. And so it's something that anyone can do, but it's very simple. What you need to do is think about people that you really admire. And it could be someone who's that you work with. It could be someone in your family. It could be someone in a movie. It could be an historical character, or it could even be a pet. So you want to make a list of those 4, 5, 6 people or characters that you really identify with. And then what you want to do is you want to write down the words that come to mind about that character or that person. So is that person smart? Are they kind? Are they innovative? Are they creative? Do they dress like, a certain way? So what you want to do is you want to get a collection of characteristics, and then you want to see what keeps popping up over and over and over again. So for instance, if you write down funny and you see funny so many times, you're like, wow. So maybe humor is one of your values. And what this does is it really unlocks what's inside of you. And the other thing you can do is you can write down people or characters that you don't like. So these would be your shadow values and things that you don't want. So, that will give you an idea of what you don't want with relationships and jobs and clients. So what you've got now is you've got a map and you know what your values are. Like, for instance, if education is a big value for you, then you want to work with a company that really values education. It doesn't mean you have to work at a school or university. Maybe you are a person, though, that it's really important for you to educate your clients. Maybe if you're creative, you're a person who is just so idea driven. You want to be in a place where you can share ideas. So I really feel like you have to have your own personalized value map inside and know what it is. And then when you go on an interview, you can say, these are values. So for instance, one of mine is diversity. And it even extends to things like if I have a barbecue, I'm going to do a couple different dishes with a couple of different sauces. And it's not going to be the same thing. I just cannot do one thing. I have to have a diverse mix because I feel like, or I love to present a diverse mix of ideas and creativity. So those are some ideas you can use about how to unlock values.
Interesting. So I think the values that you're talking about, I've heard them referred to as core values. So right. I love the fact that you're saying, pick 3 or 4 people that you like and you admire, but also pick 3 or 4 people that you don't like, because a lot of times we are able to easily identify what we like, but it's a little bit harder to identify what we don't like or what we don't want. So I think that's pretty key. And you referred to those as shadow values. Is that correct? The negative values? Okay. So the shadow values, I think, are also going to bring benefit. What are some of the other ways that you can recommend for women to, other than values, to be able to justify, if maybe that's even the right word, their value to an employer? Like you said, why should, maybe like if you're trying to ask, why should somebody hire you? Like what else do you think women can do in that respect?
Well, one thing I love is to use other people's voices. And on LinkedIn, you can get recommendations. So if someone says you did a good job, you can copy the email and send in a recommendation request. And that will be outside validation that you are a good person to work with. So I think that's one thing to do, is really seek outside. Another thing you can do is to volunteer for not-for-profit organizations, associations. For example, right now, I'm the Vice President of Marketing for National Speakers Association in the Carolinas chapter. Well, what does that mean? It means that I am really dedicated to the industry and I don't mind giving my time. And so I feel like that way you get, you expand your network and you also show that you are dedicated to giving back. And it doesn't have to be a professional organization. It could be a not-for-profit, it could even be with your children's school. So I feel like that's another thing you can do. And I also feel like you have to be your own advocate. And as a PR person, I've been accused of shameless self-promotion by my peers who are always laughing because they're like, you're always out there promoting yourself. And I'm like, I sure am. And it feels kind of funny to do that, to say, if I'll send out a press release that I am going to be speaking somewhere, I'm like, I'm promoting myself. But on the other hand, if you don't tell people about you, they won't know about you. So that's one thing you can do. And then, of course, also social media. If you want to position yourself as a thought leader, no matter if you're on rung level 1 or if you're going to be in the clouds, you can be a thought leader based on what you share. So let's say you're really into marketing. And right now, marketing is going through tons of change. But you know what? It's been doing that for years. So if you want to position yourself as a thought leader in marketing, then share articles that have pointers to the direction of the future. You can comment on people's posts, but you want to be a voice in the conversation that's happening around your industry. And you can even be a starter. One of the things I love to do is start things up. And when we moved from Oak Park to Glen Ellen, Illinois, I started the Independent Writers of the West. And on behalf of Independent Writers of Chicago, we had 40 people show up for lunch, which was really nice. So you can start something up. Or I started Social Media Club Chicago with my friend Jeff Willinger. We had 3,000 members. So think about how you could really supersize yourself, if you will, and just really take the vision of who you are and how you can beam your light out into the world, because we need people to take that initiative.
That's great. And so I love the supersize yourself. I think women don't do that enough. And I also love the shameless self-promotion. In corporate, sometimes self-promotion is what women need to do. And I'll give you an example. When I was an individual contributor, I finally approached a manager saying, you know what, I'm interested in management. And they were like, oh, really? And I said, yeah, really? Like, what do you mean? Oh, really? They're like, well, you never said anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never said anything. And I realized that I was just waiting for someone to come and ask me if I wanted to go into management, because I didn't even realize. And that's kind of why we're having this really important conversation, because women sometimes don't even realize that we're holding ourselves back by not saying anything, by not asking, what's next in my career, that succession plan for the individual. So I really like the shameless self-promotion. And I think, I'm going to try to do that myself, Barbara. So, and then of course, social media as well. So all of those are really great things. Now, as far as a mentor, and mentorship is not really a new concept, but when you think of a mentor, what is it? How do you even get a mentor?
Well, I think, that's the big struggle for people, is they feel like, what does that relationship look like? And I think people are hesitant to ask anyone because they feel like it's going to take too much of their time and they're going to say no. So what you can do is you can ask for some time to just exchange ideas or ask if they had advice. If you really want to take it up to the top level, you can interview a whole bunch of people that you're really interested in and do an article on LinkedIn. And so you can see where it goes. But I think for me, the biggest thing is to really identify people who are in a place where you want to be. And it might just be somebody that you like to follow on social media. Brene Brown is she's not really a mentor that I don't know anyone that works with her personally, but, she's someone that you can look to for direction and guidance. And then on a more personal level, one of the best ways to look for a mentor, I think, is to go back to an industry group, or if there's someone in your company, if you have a women's group. If you don't have a women's group yet, please start one. And it's International Women's Month in March. So it's a great time to start a group. And even things like if you went to college and you were in a sorority, I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and you did too.
Yeah.
And my sisters, oh my gosh, when they say it's lifelong, you're like, I don't know, 18, you're like, sure, I'm in, it really is, Right. So I think if you can think about who you want in your mentorship circle, you can keep it really small. It could even be a family member. I know my Aunt Mary was the biggest mentor I ever had. She was the first CFO for a manufacturing company in our hometown. She was brilliant. And I didn't even know how brilliant she was at the time, but she was so good to me, with different things and different tactics to take. So somebody that you can call on and rely on, and also think about yourself as a mentor. So how can you mentor other people? Maybe what you do is you do peer-to-peer mentorship where you compare notes. It could be at the same company, it could be somebody in a different company, but how are things going for you? And if it's as simple as sitting down and saying, these are my career goals, what are your career goals? And just exchanging notes and challenging each other to move up, that could really work out for everyone.
I like that, challenging each other. So I actually have two of my best friends were roommates of mine at the University of Illinois. And, we're all busy, but, every like 2 or 3 months, we try to at least have a nice conversation and, we can get together as often as we can. But we do just that. We support each other. We sometimes challenge each other and going like, what's going on with you? Why aren't you doing what you said you were going to do? So I think that's really good. Now, you said industry groups. When you say industry groups, you're obviously in marketing, but what kind of industry groups are you referring to?
Well, for marketing, of course, American Marketing Association, Chicago has a huge chapter, meetings and events. That's Meeting Professionals International. They have a great chapter in Chicago, and I did volunteer there with marketing, and that was really exciting. Really, so, for me, it's like, what kind of people do you want to hang around with? And who are your people? Go find your people. And that's what's really interesting. So if you are in accounting, there's all kinds of accounting groups, and those are your people. So find your people and go hang out with them. That's automatically going to position you and nudge you up a little bit higher because you're going to have a better network. You're going to know what's going on. And the way the world is moving, it is like everything is, to me, it's almost like light speed, which is kind of frightening, but it's also exciting. So if you're not on the rocket ship yet, get your ticket and get on there now because you don't want to be left behind.
Right. I agree. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation. Now, you also said that women can volunteer. And that's, to me, I think volunteering, that's within your organization. You can volunteer to start some kind of process improvement, or if you see that there's a problem going on, try to go to your manager with some recommendations on how you can solve the problem. And like you said, make yourself a thought leader, even within the organization. I think a lot of times women, even if they're, an individual contributor, just because they're not a manager, sometimes they think that they don't have anything to contribute. But we know that they do. And it's just a matter of recognizing that everybody can contribute. And like you said, if you're not on the, if you don't have your ticket to the rocket ship, get it, because things are moving and evolving, but you have to take action. I think that's the biggest thing that you have to do is take action.
I so agree.
Now, as far as mentorship, you said you can also mentor others. And is that something that has to be like a formal process, or can it just be like a coffee situation? Like, how do you picture that when you say you can mentor others?
Well, it could be, once again, it can be anything you want it to be, but the more formalized it is, maybe what you say is you want to take on a mentor and you have a mentor of the quarter or something like that, or maybe you follow someone through a year and you get together every month. It depends on what they want to do too. But what is the goal and what is the responsibility? It's not just getting together to have coffee. There's tons of people you can do that with, but what are you really working on together? And maybe what you have, I love the mastermind concept, maybe what you have is a mentoring mastermind where you have maybe 4 to 6 women. And what we do in our mastermind that I'm in is we take a few minutes to talk about what's going well and what is our biggest challenge. And then everyone steps in and says, okay, here's how we would solve the challenge if they have an idea. Sometimes they don't. But they're also there if we say, I really want to get this done. Can you hold me accountable? And so the next time we check in, if you haven't done anything, so maybe a small group would be in a monthly format with, 40-minute phone call or something instead of getting together for coffee would work out.
Got it.
It's all kinds of ways, Rosie. You just have to get together.
Absolutely. Okay. So you obviously know a lot of people, both male and female. One of the things that always is perplexing to me is how men are like, they don't think twice about applying for a job or speaking up or, doing whatever. I think there's like a meme that says, the average guy that's like a, 6 out of 10, they're like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good. And then the women are just like, oh my gosh, right? I'm not a 10. So Barbara, can you recognize, I asked you for characteristics in the women, but have you been able to identify some characteristics in men that we can talk about a little bit, and how it is that, I don't want to say things are easy for them, but let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I have 2 sons, and they're both 164, 165. So I look up to them, literally. And, it's fun to watch. They're both doing really, really well. I guess one of the things that I see in them, I'll just tell you some things, and it's just men in general, but I'm thinking of them as well. The limits are a lot less. They don't hold themselves back as much. I don't know if they don't have as much negative self-talk that women have. I don't know about other women, but I know sometimes it's like, as soon as you start to do something, it's like, you can't really do that, So I think that's one thing. They are very confident. They'll go forward and get what they want. Let's face it, guys like to hang out together. There's a lot of bro zone thing happening, and I'm always laughing about it, because I call my sons the 2 brothers, because they're always hanging out with their bros and they're having a good time, which is lovely. It's wonderful. So as women, we do get together as sisters, but maybe I don't know if we really relax and push each other forward as much, maybe as men do sometimes, so those are a couple different things. And maybe, I think sometimes maybe they know what they want more too. And I know some men can be indecisive, so can women, but maybe they have a straighter line. I'm not sure.
You said something about maybe men are able to relax a little bit more. And I think you're right. I think that's probably one of the biggest keys, because my parents were here visiting me a couple of months ago because I had some health issues, and both my parents were here, and they're in their 80s. And my mom, every half hour, we were watching a movie. She's like, let me go check on your dad. I'm like, Mom, Dad is in the other room. If he needs you, he will come and tell you something that he needs. But I do feel that, we're so busy taking care of everybody else, and we want to make sure that everybody's needs are met, that sometimes it is hard for us to relax and just really think about what we want and what the future holds for us. So, I always talk about self-care. Self-care is so important for women. And even if it's 3 minutes that you take out of your day to breathe and just kind of slow down for just those few minutes, that's going to make a difference in your psyche. But I think all of this conversation just boils down to methods and things that women can do in order to self-promote. And I'm going to start using that a lot more, going forward, Barbara, because self-promotion for women is key. And like I said, it happened to me where I wasn't even saying that I wanted to move into a management position. And I could have moved into a management position much sooner. And I just didn't realize that I was holding myself back. And by the way, I recently found out that women that don't negotiate salary can earn up to $2 million less over a lifetime than their male counterparts. So isn't that incredible? So
it is. Yeah. And I do have to say, negotiation is something, one of the last things I did at my corporate job is I looked at 2 classes I wanted to take because I knew I was going to leave. And one of them was a negotiation masterclass. And I learned about how to negotiate, and I turned it right around on them. So I negotiated my 10-week maternity leave, and it's really a very important skill to have. And one of the simple things about negotiation is to ask for more than what you'll take, So that was one of the first rules, is don't stick with, if you think you're going to ask for, a 4% raise, ask for an 8% raise, which sounds way out there, but you never know. They might come back and give you 6. So, that's one of the keys with negotiation.
That's awesome. I love that. Ask for more than what you want so that they can settle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Barbara. Well, this has been such a great conversation. Before I let you go, though, I do want to ask you, do you have 2 actionable tips? And I know you've already given us a lot, but do you have 2 actionable tips on recommendations that women can implement in their lives today?
And what do you want the tips to do?
Yeah, so the tips would be for women to be able to implement in their careers so that they know to advance.
Tips.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So 2 career advancement tips. First thing, go to LinkedIn and look at your dream job. Pick out like 4 or 5 dream jobs, dream companies that you want to work for. Then look at the skills that are listed because they should be right there. Make sure that you have those skills on your LinkedIn profile, because then you'll be more of a match. And if you haven't done your skills on your LinkedIn profile, make sure you get those up there, because that's going to give you a lot more visibility and a lot more reach. And I'd also love you to work on your LinkedIn profile, but that's another conversation. So the second thing I would say for career advancement is to really see yourself in like 2 to 3 years. You could go 5 or 10 if you want, but just like, another 24 months, where do you see yourself? Where would you really, really love to be? And then look at women who are already there and find out how they got there and close that gap. So figure out, like, just tying in the skills for a minute, what skills do you need that you don't have yet? And make sure that you can fill in those blanks so that you can progress. So always see yourself as climbing or taking stepping stones, however you want to visualize it, but always see yourself as rising and doing better and better and better and better, because you deserve it.
Oh my gosh, those are great. And I had not heard those, but I think the skills on LinkedIn are key. And then also the second thing you said was to look at a job that maybe you want to do down the line. And this is where you look at people that already have that job and network with them. So I think those are 2 great skills. So thank you very much for that. All right. So any final parting words, Barbara?
Well, Rosie, my career it's been a really long one. I tell people I have a checkered past because I've done a lot of different things. And I would just like to encourage everyone to think about yourself as someone who is always in a state of reinvention. Look at what you can do differently and really look at yourself as, just advancing and just becoming more and more and more the person you've always wanted to be. So thank you so much. I've had a wonderful time talking to you, and I wish everyone the absolute best. If I can help you with anything, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to help you make the next move.
Well, I know that I definitely learned some things from Barbara and our great conversation. So just to recap, the 2 tips that Barbara gave is, the first one is go to LinkedIn and find 4 to 5 dream jobs that you would love to have. Look at the skills that are listed for those dream jobs and make sure that your LinkedIn profile has those skills listed. The second thing is see yourself in a position that you would want to be 2 to 3 years from now, and identify women that are already in those positions. Talk to them and ask them how they got to where they are. Well, again, I certainly learned a lot from Barbara, and I hope that you did too. She gave us a lot of great tips and action items to continue to advance and grow in your career. Barbara's contact information is going to be on our blog at nowomanleftbehind.com. So make sure you check there for any information. And with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends, because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.